Beaker. We just got back from a run. I still need to take her harness off, but I figured I would let the pupper say hi since this is about her after all. Hey guys! Welcome back to my channel. We're going to do another raw feeding video today as requested. I'm going to be talking about some of the supplements and extra things I feed my dogs. I figured I would go ahead and split this video into two parts so that it wasn't just like one giant mega 40-minute video because I have a bad habit of doing that. Today I'm going to be talking about whole food based supplements, I guess, like real foods that are not necessarily required in a raw diet, but that you can feed for some extra nutrition. In the next video I'll go ahead and talk about some of the specific vitamins that I actually supplement for my dogs. So yeah. And today, everything I'm going to be talking about is also great for kibble-fed dogs, so if you have not quite made the transition to raw, or maybe you know somebody that's still feeding their dogs kibble, but you think they might be interested in something extra, everything I'm going to be talking about today is great for kibble-fed dogs too. Real quick before we get started, I also wanted to remind you, once you're done watching the video, or whenever, go ahead and check the description down below. I'm going to be listing a bunch of different resources, different links to things, some of the supplements I'm going to be talking about, old videos, resources, things like that. So if you have any questions, go ahead and look down there. Anyways, let's get to it. Alright, the first thing I want to talk about today is, in my opinion, the most important thing. Whether you're feeding raw or kibble, most dogs are very low in omega-3s. So you want to add a fish oil to their diet. This is the sardine anchovy oil from Iceland Pure. I also sometimes buy grizzly oil. I'll switch between the pollock and the salmon just for some extra variety. But yeah, for raw-fed dogs, unless you are feeding pretty much exclusively grass-fed meats, things like that, if you're buying a lot of venison, if you hunt, then you're probably okay, but for the most part I know most of us can't afford to feed that way, or it's just logistically not possible. So if you are feeding a lot of commercially raised meat, you definitely want to add a fish oil. Feeding fish is great too. The only downside is that you have to feed a lot, like a very large portion of the diet, to get enough omega-3s in, which can kind of, you know, interfere with the amount of red meat that you're feeding your dog too. So I do feed some fish, but also a few days a week I like to add fish oil to my dog's meals. And yeah, most raw-fed dogs are not getting enough fish oils if you don't supplement, so this is very important. The second thing I like to feed my dogs that is not necessarily required in a raw diet is whole raw eggs, including the shell. Now, one thing I see a lot with eggs that people freak out about is biotin deficiency. So a lot of people will say, well, if you feed raw eggs, isn't there some sort of problem with biotin? That is true to a certain extent. So in raw egg whites, there is an enzyme called avidin that binds biotin and prevents it from being absorbed. So if you fed your dogs exclusively raw egg whites, that would probably be a problem, yes. You can cook the egg whites to deactivate that enzyme, however that does take away from some of the nutritional benefit, as we know as raw feeders. But the great thing is if you feed the egg yolk as well as the egg white, yolks are really high in biotin, so it totally counteracts that sort of negative effect of avidin. So if you're feeding the whole egg all together, you don't really need to worry about that. Eggs themselves are a really good source of nutrition, good source of fat and protein. The shell has a little bit of calcium in there to counteract the phosphorus that's in the egg itself. So yeah, whole eggs, great thing to add to your dog's diet. For my dogs, they're bigger, so I feed them, 2 or 3 a week. If you have a small dog, you might do 1 or 2. And yeah, raw eggs are usually enjoyed even by kibble-fed dogs as well. Next thing I want to mention is raw apple cider vinegar. I buy the Bragg's brand. Doesn't really matter what brand though, just make sure it's raw and unfiltered for the most benefit. Apple cider vinegar is good for quite a few things. It's good for their skin and coat. It aids their digestion. If you have a dog that has yeast problems like in their paws or their ears or even just on their skin in general, adding apple cider vinegar can help decrease that, I guess you'd say. I don't feed this to my dogs every day because they don't really have like a major problem with yeast or anything like that, but I do like to give it just as an extra boost. The only downside is my dogs hate the taste of this stuff, so the way I counteract that is I usually feed it together with the fish oil and I kind of mix them together and they'll eat it that way. You can also add it to their water, however, just be careful and make sure it doesn't decrease the amount of water that your dog is drinking because like I said, my dogs really hate the way this stuff tastes, so when I first added it to their water, they just like refuse to drink water, which is definitely not good. So yeah, you can definitely add this to their food too as well. If your dog has a really bad yeast problem, like I said, you might want to feed this to them every day until you get the problem under control. But otherwise, I usually give this to my dog 2 or 3 times a week with fish oil, like I said, and I give them maybe like a teaspoon or 2. The next 2 things I have to talk about, I'm going to go ahead and mention together because I usually feed them together. And it's chia seeds and kelp. This is dried kelp. It's flakes. This is a pet-specific brand, but it doesn't really matter what one you get. Same for the chia seed. I don't even know if they make chia seeds specifically for pets. Anything is fine as long as it's good quality. Usually I buy these in larger quantities so that they're a little more cost-effective. Both of these are great sources of trace vitamins and minerals. And here there's a lot of copper, magnesium, calcium. Kelp is a great source of iodine and other sea-based minerals. So yeah, these are just a great kind of extra nutritional supplement. They're also a good source of fiber if your dog has any, number 2 problems. They're good for that as well. With these, usually the way I like to feed it, the chia seeds are whole the way I buy them, and then these are kind of larger flakes. I like to ground them into fine powder. I just feel like that helps my dogs digest it a little bit better. This might be TMI, but when I was feeding the whole chia seeds and the whole kelp flakes, I could still see it in their poop, which makes me feel like they may not be getting very much out of it if it's coming out whole, So usually I mix these half and half and grind them up together, and then I feed like a heaping teaspoon or 2 once a day. The next thing I have to talk about is coconut oil. You want to go ahead and get the raw, unrefined variety. Coconut oil is somewhat debated amongst raw feeders as to how helpful it is. One thing that a lot of people don't like is that many people consider coconut oil to be like the cure for everything. If your dog has any problem, the answer is coconut oil, which I don't like either. Coconut oil I do think is good to feed your dog, but you don't want to have it replace like veterinary care for a serious problem. It's great topically as well on cuts or things like that. If your dog is having dry skin, you can use it as a conditioner. For me, I feed this just a couple times a week. The one like really big thing that bothers me is a lot of people say they feed coconut oil instead of fish oil because that's good for their coat. Yes, coconut oil is great for their coat. Fish oil is also great for their coat. However, coconut oil does not have any omega-3s at all, so if you're feeding coconut oil, you still want to feed fish oil. Do not skip fish oil. That's really important. However, feeding both together is a lot of fat, so I really only feed coconut oil a couple days a week just for a little extra boost. Helps their skin. Also, it's a good source of calories, which, depending on your dog, may be a good thing, might be a bad thing. My dogs are really active, so usually if we went on a bike joyride or if we went running or on a really long hike, I'll give them a good tablespoon when we get home, just for some extra calories so they maintain their weight. So yeah, used appropriately, I think coconut oil is a good addition. Next thing I want to talk about is a great all-natural joint supplement, and it is green lipped mussel powder. This is the one that I buy. It is from Super Snouts. This is one made for dogs and cats specifically, so it's just the powder by itself. You can also buy capsules, usually at vitamin stores, things like that. However, they are more expensive. These, since they're not in capsules, it's just the powder, it's way cheaper, and also dogs usually really like the taste because it's pretty stinky. This is a great source of glucosamine, chondroitin, hyaluronic acid. There's also some vitamins and minerals and things like that, but its main benefit is as a joint supplement. So yeah, I like to feed this to Cody, my larger dog. He's a German Shepherd mix. That breed, as you probably know, is pretty predisposed to joint issues. So yeah, I like to feed this just as a preventative, especially since my dogs are so active. Okay, the next 2 things I have to mention, I don't necessarily feed every single day. It really just depends. Like, I might feed it if I feel like their meal is on the small side and I want to add a few extra things to help them feel full, things like that. Fruits and veggies fall into that category. I don't really keep track of fruits and veggies that I feed to them. Usually it's just like if we're eating something that I know they also like, I'll give them a little bit. Like, our dogs love bananas. They also really like, I'm trying to think, spinach. For whatever reason, they love spinach, so I'll give them some spinach here and there. They like berries. So those kind of things I usually just throw in as treats sporadically. I don't really keep track of it. I know some people don't feed any fruits or vegetables at all. That's also fine if you don't want to. My dogs don't seem to have any problem with it. Doesn't seem to hurt them. I wouldn't feed like a large portion because then you might upset their tummy, but a little bit here and there I think is okay as a treat, and also again provides a little bit extra vitamins and minerals. One thing I do like to feed more often is fermented vegetables. This is actually a little bit of sauerkraut. Sorry. we've been eating this and I've been sharing it with the dogs as well. I just started fermenting vegetables for them probably late last year, but it's been really fun actually. Fermented vegetables are a little bit more bioavailable for the dogs because it's already somewhat broken down. When you ferment them, it also kind of increases the amount of certain vitamins in there that the bacteria help produce. It's also a good source of probiotics, so there's that as well. And yeah, fermented vegetables are definitely not something you have to feed. However, I do think you get a good bang for your buck with these guys, and it's pretty easy if you've never fermented vegetables before. It's pretty easy. One thing I would definitely suggest you get is pickle weights. I learned this the hard way. You want to keep your vegetables submerged under a brine, otherwise they get moldy. So these pickle weights, you can buy them in different sizes. It's just a little piece of glass that weighs down the vegetables to help keep them submerged. And as you saw, I like to make mine in mason jars just because they're cheap and handy. So yeah, fermented veggies, another thing I feed. And the last couple things I feed are bone broth. Bone broth I don't feed necessarily every day. I like to feed it as a treat sometimes, especially in the summer. I'll go ahead and freeze it and it makes it nice, kind of like a little popsicle for them. They really enjoy it. However, I do like to keep bone broth on hand in case they're sick. It's really easy on their gut, easy to digest. I don't know, I feel like it's kind of like the doggy version of chicken noodle soup. The way I like to store it is when I make a batch, I will put it in this silicone mold. This mold in particular holds about 3 tablespoons in each one of these little spots. And then I'll freeze it in ice cubes. That way if I need to give them any, it's good to go. There's already a good sized portion in there. If you're not familiar with bone broth, basically it's like a soup or a stock made with just bones. So you'll put bones into a pot, or I usually make it in a crock pot. You'll fill it with water and you'll simmer it at a really low heat for a day or two. And then once you cool it, the broth is really jelly and it basically extracted all of the gelatin and all the nutrients out of the bone marrow. Since raw-fed dogs, for the most part, are eating whole bones, obviously they are getting a lot of the benefit of eating bones. So like I said, I don't really feed it to them every day. There's also some glucosamine in bone broth, so if you have an older arthritic dog, it might be good to feed them daily as well. If you have a kibble-fed dog, bone broth is great to help them get the extra nutrition from the bones that they aren't eating because they're eating kibble. And also sick dogs, like I said, it's really easy on their stomach and it's good to encourage them to eat, get some liquids in there, things like that. So I always like to have a batch of bone broth on hand. One last thing I almost forgot to mention, and I can't believe I forgot it or I didn't mention it earlier because I feed it to the dogs basically every single day, it's kefir. And if you've never heard of kefir before, it's kind of like yogurt. It's very similar to yogurt, except it's more liquidy and runnier. I actually make my own kefir. I bought some kefir grains on Amazon. There's also some Facebook groups about kefir where you can buy and sell grains from each other. It's really easy to make. You can also buy it in the store. Usually it's become a lot more widely available over the past couple of years because it's pretty popular. However, it's a lot more expensive. It's about probably $4 a quart, where I usually make mine for like $4 a gallon or less. And then also the other thing that is kind of crappy about it for dogs in particular is that there's added sugar. So your dogs don't really need the added sugar. You don't really need the added sugar either if you like to drink kefir. It's really easy to make at home, so I highly encourage you to do that. Kefir is similar to yogurt, like I said. However, there are way more probiotics in a serving of kefir than there are in yogurt. The probiotics and the bacteria and things like that are in kefir also, for whatever reason, they survive in your gut much better. And then kefir also has some beneficial strains of yeast. Now, you might hear yeast and like freak out, but it's the good kind of yeast and it actually helps combat the bad type of yeast in your body or your dog's body. So again, kefir is great to feed to yeasty dogs. It's also just great in general. It's really good for their gut. So yeah, I feed kefir every day. Kefir, I also use this little mold for, like I did with the bone broth. Usually I'll go ahead and make like a gallon at a time, and as I make, well, maybe not a gallon at once, I'll make a quart at once with a gallon of milk, and then once the gallon of milk is out, I freeze the grains until the next batch, and then I serve individual cubes as just one serving. Alright guys, that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you found this helpful. I know it's kind of long. Like I said in the beginning of this video, go ahead and check the description. There's going to be a lot of links to helpful things or things that I mentioned in this video. I'll try to summarize down there just in case you want to see it as a reference. If you have any questions or any video requests about raw feeding or anything else, definitely let me know. I'm definitely not an expert. I've just been feeding raw to my dogs for a couple of years and figured I would try and help people make the transition. I know there's a lot of information out there, So yeah, just trying to pass on some of the wisdom I have. But yeah, hope you found this video helpful. If you want to go ahead and follow the dogs on Instagram, we're Parker's Pups. I post a lot about our hiking and other fun things that we do. Yeah, I think that's it. Like I said, I'm going to go ahead and do a second part to this video about some of the actual vitamins that I specifically supplement individually. I'll try and go ahead and get that up in the next few weeks. Sorry, I'm kind of slow with the uploads. Anyways, I hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you next time. Bye! Hi, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing another video about raw feeding your dog. This video is going to be all about how I prep my meals for my dogs, the containers I use, how I like to set it up, things like that. If you're looking for like a basics, what to feed your dog, how much to feed your dog, where to get started, suppliers, things like that, go ahead and check out my last raw feeding video. I covered all of that info and some other stuff in there, so I'll go ahead and link that down below or put a card